Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Cecilia Costa. I am a senior scientist at CREA, the Agriculture and Research Center Environment in Bologna, Italy. Today I am going to talk about honeybee breeding and give you a review of the status of the EU market. What I will present mostly is results from the EURBE study, which was funded by the EU Commission and took place between 2018 and 2021. So when we talk about honeybee reproductive material, what are we talking about? We are talking about queen bees. So when we talk about trade of queen bees, we mean a young egg-laying queen, recently mated, held in a small cage with about 10 workers. We can see here queen bee and the cages, one type of cages which hold the queen and the honeybee workers. Then there are small colonies, also termed swarms or nuclei or nukes. Usually these are small colonies on 4 to 5 frames and include brood and honey with an egg-laying queen. Often sold in polystyrene boxes, but depends on the country and the beekeeping practices. Then there are package bees, generally consisting of 1.5 or 2 kilos of adult bees without frames. So no brood, no honey, and sometimes are sold without a queen present. So it can be sold with or without a queen present. And these 18 million hives are managed by about 600,000 beekeepers. And so the EU has official numbers on the number of colonies and the number of beekeepers, but the EU doesn't have any official information on the reproductive market. So one of the aims of the EURBE study was to assess the market of reproductive material, and we did this using some expert knowledge and preparing questionnaires and using our network of experts across the EU. And we found information on the number of queens, swarms, and package bees that are produced annually. And these are shown in these graphs. We found that the total number of queens is almost 2 million, so actually more precisely 1.8 million. And we can see in this graph, based on the color, the countries that produce the highest number of queens. The first place is Italy, which is producing almost a third of these 1.8 million queens, followed by Poland and France, and the other countries following. Swarms, the total number of commercial swarms that are marketed are about 600,000, coming mainly from the 6 countries that we can see highlighted in blue. Again, Italy is in the first place, about 300,000 swarms, followed by France and then Spain. Package bees, there is a market for these. Again, mostly the country with the highest number of marketed package bees is Italy, followed again by France, and then my face unfortunately is covering it because in the third place, trust me, there is Greece. Also, we see some market in Poland and in Finland. So mainly we're talking about queens, almost 2 million, then swarms, 600,000, package bees, 100,000. And we see that for queens, the market is widespread. There is a market of queens, a trade of queens in practically all EU countries. We also assessed the number of breeders present in the EU, and we found that the total number of queen breeders is about 2,800. Almost 3,000 beekeepers are also queen breeders. This corresponds to less than 1% of the total number of beekeepers in the EU. So it's a very small portion of beekeepers that are highly specialized. And we can see here with the color scale, the color map, that the highest number of breeders are in Germany, followed by France, and then Italy and Greece. and also a certain degree, certain number, over 100 breeders in Romania. When we talk about queens, there are different categories. There are breeder queens, which have undergone a strict selection. Mating has been controlled either through instrumental insemination or by isolated mating stations. And these queens are used for further multiplication of genetic material, so to produce a high number of queens that will then be destined to honey production or pollination services. And these are called open mated queens. In this case, the mating is not strictly controlled and they are for direct use in colonies. In some countries, there is a market of unmated queens or queen cells. So in this case, only the maternal contribution is sold and the mating of the queens occurs in the beekeeper's apiaries. But this is very marginal only in some countries. In some countries, it is widespread, as in Poland. We also assess the prices of the reproductive material. Here we have the average across the EU. So the average price for a breeder queen is just under 40 euros, and the average price for an open mated queen is half that amount, about 20 euros. Swarms are the ones with the highest price, highest average price, about 105 euros, but with a very high variability, so the prices differ a lot across the EU. This is also because the definition of a swarm is not so precise, so in different countries it has a different meaning. So in some countries it can mean a sort of bigger colony, in other cases it's just a very small colony with only a few frames. So this is also the reason why the price differs so much. For package bees, the average price is lower, about 80 euros, and there was slightly less variability. And when we come to the value of the honeybee reproductive material market, we found that the total annual value is about 86 million euro. This was assessed conservatively because the income from queens was assessed using the average price of an open mated queen, because for some countries we did not have the price of the breeder queens or the distinction. So we assessed it in a conservative way. And we can see that the biggest share of the annual value is due to the swarms, because their price is so much higher compared to queens. We also collected data on import and export through surveys. We found that actually only about 3.5% of the total production is used for export. So export interests about 55,000 queens per year that are exported from their countries of origin. So this can be trade within the EU or outside the EU. It's export of queens from their country of origin to another country. Instead, we go and look at the imports. This is higher number, so it's about 210,000 queens are imported annually. Most of the import is done by French beekeepers who are, according to the survey results, they told us a lot of them are importing from South America as well as other European countries. And we see other countries that have some import are Italy and UK and Germany and Denmark, Greece and Finland. Then we also looked at the structure of the breeding organizations and of the legislation, and so we asked our experts whether there is specific legislation for bee breeding in their country, and we found that this is in place for only about half of the countries that are the ones that are highlighted in blue. So in these countries, there is some kind of specific legislation in place for honeybee breeding. But when we went into detail to look at, is there, for example, legal recognition of mating stations that can enable the selection progress? In most countries, no. In red, there is not. And even in those where there is, in blue, in many cases there were reports that yes, there is a legal recognition, but it is very difficult to have it respected. Finally, another thing we did in the Elbe study was to assess the costs of colony evaluation and queen selection and production, which we find you see in these in these tables and in this graph. So first of all, we looked at the colony evaluation. Here you see symbols representing countries because we did this evaluation in 5 different countries across Europe, in which we also had field studies, and these were Germany, Greece, France, Italy, and Poland. And we found very different costs for the evaluation, mainly due to the different cost of labor. But if we look at the average, it's 193 euros, and in this pie chart we see the breakdown of the evaluation. So just a basic performance testing, so considering traditional apicultural traits such as gentleness and honey production, we found that this represents 20% of this cost, and Varroa infestation monitoring accounts for 11% of this cost. Hygienic behavior then brings another 8%, and the very Varroa tolerance or resistance specific traits such as SMR, suppression of micro-reproduction, and recapping behavior, and Varroa sensitive hygiene are representing the biggest proportion of the cost of the evaluation. So this is the total colony evaluation considering all these traits. So this will be lower if only the basic performance testing is considered, or will be less than half if basic performance testing and Varroa infestation and hygienic behavior considered. Well, these are highly specialized. This is highly specialized work, which is usually done by research institutes or by breeding associations who have a very specific breeding program for Varroa resistance. We then looked at the cost of production, so the cost of queen production, without considering, and then the separate voice. So the colony evaluation is a separate line, and we found that the cost of queen production on average is 22.5 euros, and the cost for breeding evaluation, so estimation of breeding values, is about 8 euros. So that brings the total cost for production of a selected queen to 220 euros. So with this, I would like to thank my Eurbest team for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and good luck and enjoy the conference and the roundtable.